Good morning and welcome to my garden. The time has come. I'm going to pick one of my shallots. I was using the tops of the shallots for a little bit and then I realised I really wanted to harvest the base of a shallot, so I stopped using the tops so that would give the chance for the plant to put all the nutrition into its base. So I'm just going to pull out this first one and see how it's developed. Okay, here's the base of this one bunch. And you can see that they are bunching because I planted this as one bulb, just like that. I suspect this is not as big as they get. This is a much thicker stem, so I'm wondering if that one's actually going to have bigger bunching bulbs on it. Some of these others are really small. That one's really small bunch. That one's got really small stems too. Okay, this one at the back's got some bigger ones. That's interesting to me because it was this bunch at the front that I used to chop the tops off more often so I could have some spring onion tops type thing in my food. And it looks like it didn't suffer from being chopped off. I'm going to have to do an experiment on that one day. See if the size of the clumping shallot bulb is different between the ones I harvest the tops and the ones I don't. I suspect it will make a difference because the leaves are the energy collector for the bulbs, which are the energy store. A lot of the plants have thrown out flowers. In fact, I think every single, a clove, every single base has thrown a seed head. I picked a bunch the other day. I discovered that each of the individual shallots had indeed formed a flower head. That flower head has a very stiff, tough stalk that goes all the way down. In fact, that flower head took over all the other growth on the shallot, and there were very few loose leaves that weren't tough and fibrous like the flower stalk. So the result was, out of the whole bunch of shallots that I picked recently, I only got a small amount of these softer, more edible leaves. So I've learned that if you're going to plant shallots because you want to use the stems, don't let them flower. As soon as you see the flower, pick it off. Just snap it off like that. What I need to learn now is if you leave them on there and let the shallots continue their full life cycle and mature, will the bulb continue to grow? I have harvested 2 bunches of shallots from here. The first one, they were all very small and I decided they needed to wait longer to be harvested. The second bunch, every single shallot base in this clump had started to flower. That extended down into the shallot, so it made it very unpleasant to cook and eat those. So continuing with the learning and experimentation, today I'm chopping off all the flower heads. I have saved a few before last night's rain so that I can gather some seed. But I'm chopping off all these flower heads to see how that affects the next bunch of shallots. I have been picking off all the flower heads as they appear. I have noticed that the older stems have started to shrivel up and have become dry. My question has been, are there going to be any new leaves forming? And yes, I can see some new leaves forming here. So the plants are resprouting after flowering. This one here seems to be resprouting with lots of young leaves. Do they call them leaves in a shallot? But there's still all these harder ones. Every one that you can see that's hollow, that's one that I've snapped a seed head off. So most of the stems that are sticking up had seed heads on it. My question is basically, when should I pick them? The stems that had the seeds on them, they're not going to be useful to me, but perhaps the base of the shallots are. That bunch down there looks very overcrowded, so maybe it's ready to be harvested. So what do I think I need to do? At this stage, this front one has nothing edible on its top. I'm going to wait a little bit longer to see if those bases will grow larger. I reckon all the stems will shrivel up and then that'll be a good indicator that that one's ready to harvest for the bulbs. This one here, I might actually harvest this one because it's got a lot of leaf in it that looks okay. Whereas this one, these shallot bases look larger, and I reckon I can cook with them now, so I might take them in. I keep a gardening journal because I really want to learn. Writing down things helps me to learn because I can look back at them. I usually write down the time I planted the seed and the time that is generally expected to harvest for that particular plant. It's interesting to note that the time of harvest written down for shallots came before the plant started to flower. Now the bulbs were very small at that time. I'm wondering if that means that this variety wasn't intended to be a large shallot. So this is what I've pulled. I attempted to pull only one plant. I'm thinking I might have ended up with two, or this may have also come off here. They're not very big. I've never grown shallots before, so I don't know how big I'm wanting them to be. This morning, I'm replanting this bed here. This is my wedge garden bed on the south of my garden. Previously, it had produced lots of carrots for me, and I really enjoyed the fresh, crisp, sweet flavour of homegrown carrots. You should really try it sometime. According to crop rotation, after you've planted carrots, the best thing to follow with is alliums. So that's your onions, your spring onions, perhaps your garlic, shallots. And I've chosen some shallots to plant because shallots tend to bunch. So here's one of my plants that I'm planting. If you look on the top here, you'll see that they'd plant in winter and spring. So it's winter now and I'm planting now. Over the back here, it says each bulb will produce 8 to 12 bulbs. So that means instead of just having one shallot that you can pull out of the ground, rather like an onion, instead, as these grow, they grow other shallots beside them. That sounds to me like a perpetual crop. That sounds to me like something I won't have to buy to replant in the future. So I'm quite excited about that possibility. So they say to plant them 20 centimetres apart. Something I've found very useful in the garden and in the home is to be aware of your body and use it as a measuring stick. For example, how wide is your hand? That is 9 centimetres for me. So if something has to be 10 centimetres apart, I know that, yeah, I can measure just around my knuckles along there. When my hand is straight, that's 9 centimetres. When these shallots need to be 20 centimetres apart, I measure the length of my hand because that's approximately 20 centimetres. So that's how I've measured the planting. So here I have French shallots. I've already planted them. You need to plant them with their tops sticking out just a little bit. I think that's so it's easy for them to grow. I've also chosen to soak them in a mixture here. Now this mixture is worm tea, sea salt, a bit of milk. If I had molasses, I'd add a bit of molasses to it, and that helps to bring the roots back to life. Also planted here golden shallots, and now I've got some red shallots. I'll open them up and I'll show you what I mean about the root. You can see the roots on these are very dry. Soaking them will give that the opportunity to come back to life. Or you can see this is bunching here. So I might try and break that very carefully and hope that the roots go half one way and half the other. And look at that. That's exactly what they did. So there you go. That's why I've chosen bunching shallots rather than onions, because now I had one plant, I have two. And I'm wondering if this will be the case with these too. So this one, all the roots stayed on here. And this one doesn't have any visible roots. However, if you look closely, you can see little nodes. And perhaps if I'd have used two hands and been a bit more careful, I could have kept some of the actual roots on each side. So I'm going to put down the camera and actually see if I can break these next two more evenly. Okay, so with careful breaking, I managed to break this bunch and each part got some of the roots. So they're going to have a better chance of growing because they've each got some roots. So I pop them in the liquid to soak. It's like an inoculant. It's like a growth stimulator. Okay, so these have been soaking for 10 minutes, plus however long it took me to walk the garden with hubby. And you can see the one that's been soaked and the one that hasn't. You would think that having the roots moistened would benefit the plant and would lead it to being more likely to grow. Now here's a great example of how these shallots bunch together. This one's called a potato onion, a clumping onion. So this one's a little bit different from shallots. I think this one may grow a lot more like an onion. You can see that as a bulb, it looks pretty round. But you turn it over and you can see clearly there's a dividing line between the two halves of it. That one I'm going to need two hands. But this one here, and see if you can break through the paper that covers it. Oh dear. It's a bit moist. I'm wondering if that means that it's rotten. Oh well, I'll break it gently. It's a little bit moist. Isn't that a gorgeous purple colour? Yeah, this one's rotting up the top here. One of my boys yesterday was looking at the onions and he said, "Mum, why do they put them in plastic? They're going to sweat." Yeah, it's a problem. But I guess they hope to keep them dry in the shop. So I'll peel this off properly before I plant it. And hopefully that will still be able to grow. Yeah. Oh look, there's another bunch. We'll see what I can do with that. Yeah, you can see the layers, it's rotting right back. It's interesting how they're growing. That looks like two separate, I don't know what you'd call them. You'd call them cloves if they were a garlic. But it looks like that outer layer joins around both of them. I think if I leave them together, that's actually going to rot because moisture will get down inside there. So I will try to pull them apart to hope that I get at least some of it that doesn't rot. I've got various forms of shallots here. So these are French eschalions. They're the long ones, also called banana shallots. These were the red ones and these have grown really well. And these ones were the clumping onion, also known as potato onions. The golden shallots didn't sprout. Oh look, there's one that's sprouting. But it's the only one in the whole row. I don't think they're rotting. They still feel very firm. But everything else came up. The eschalions, red shallots, garlic, clumping potato shallots. They've all come up beautifully. This morning I've noticed that one of my shallots is flowering. So this is from the clumping onion. None of the others are flowering. In fact, the others are looking quite squashed by the calendula. So I might clear that back this morning. I wonder if this one has gone to flower because it's right on the edge of the bed where it would get less water, more exposure to the heat. I wonder if that is a sign that it's not in the best situation. Often plants will flower and produce fruit to reproduce when they feel stressed. So that could be why that one's flowering. As you can see, none of the others are. The red shallots and the banana shallots. Oh, there you go. One of them's got a head. I'll keep that one for seed. So maybe this is why it's better to plant shallots in autumn, so they're over winter. They may not go to seed so easily when they're planted in the cooler seasons. I'm just looking at the size of these banana shallots this morning. They are rather large. Now, when I compare that to the shallots on the other side of the garden, the bunching shallots, I begin to wonder whether these are the ones I should be saving as shallots for the bulb at the base, and those others I should be using for the cut leaves, because these are much more substantial. They actually can replace an onion in cooking. Let's check in and see how the shallots are going. These are growing really well. That's a really thick base. And they're pretty consistent along the whole line. Of course, that one's much bigger and this one's rotting. So I'm wondering if that means it's time to harvest because some of them are rotting. Generally with alliums, you harvest them when their tops start to die off. So these are red shallots. They're not very big. I think they're bigger than the ones I planted. That bunch isn't. More red shallots. That's a good size. It's interesting, as I get further into the garden bed, the size is smaller. But out on the edge, they're larger. I don't know what that means. These were the clumping onions. A couple of these here have got seed heads on them. So I'll let these two mature, but I won't let these develop seed heads. But they're really small. I'm currently harvesting the banana shallots. The ones I bought were not this big. However, I would have liked to have more than doubled my crop. So these two grew from the one plant. They were joined at the base there. I don't know why they didn't have more bulbs formed. Now, is that a result of the amount of water they received? I don't know. This bed didn't have a watering system. You can see this one rotted. So that one was actually the pup beside this bigger one. So that's a good size shallot, but they haven't really multiplied. And buying that one shallot at the store, which was actually probably the size of that, and then only getting that back, I'm not sure that it's worth it. I'll give them another try and see if they multiply. Maybe a different variety would multiply better. So these were the red shallots, and those two come from one plant. Yeah, okay, this one's rotted. It was too long. I should have picked this one earlier. Okay, this has got a number of plants on it. In fact, this is small, so I might even run the risk of leaving that in the ground to get bigger. This one here. Okay, what's that, 3? 4. 1, 2, 3, but looks like there's 2 inside this sheath. Okay, that's better. How big are these? Okay, they're small, and that's a single. I'm going to experiment. That was a single. I'm going to leave those ones in and see if they continue to grow. Now these clumping onions, potato shallot. This front one, I'm going to take this one out. That's some nice friable soil. This garden bed actually received quite a thick layer of horse manure and sugarcane mulch. So that one was the clumping onion. These ones were the red shallots, and those ones were the banana shallots. So that's my shallot harvest. It's not as wonderful as I was hoping, but I learnt something, and that's the goal, isn't it?